Okay, great. So I'm going to start off by saying hello to Andrew for joining me. Andrew's who is from New Frameworks, but will explain a little bit more about themselves and New Frameworks in a little bit. But just to kick off, I'm Lizah again. This is one of the last interviews. I don't know in what order they will come, but I've been undertaking like a YouTube series, just interviewing a diverse group of companies and people from the employee ownership community here in Vermont, Burlington. I'm a PhD student at University of Vermont. I'm really interested in heterodox economics, specifically in this regard, looking at other pathways that are contrary to sort of capitalism and sort of the orthodox economic system. So I'm critically inquiring into cooperative economies, and just really trying to understand how we can use this social innovation in the intersection of the ecological crisis and inequality. So that's like my research, like broadly. However, I'm currently finishing off my summer internship with Vermont Employee Ownership Center. It's an statewide non-governmental organization that seeks to foster and promote employee ownership in Vermont, but obviously sort of trickles down to other states because some companies have a footprint, nationwide. But that's a little bit about myself, about Vermont Employee Ownership Center. Before we get into the interview with Andrew, which I'm super, super excited for today. I will let Andrew introduce themselves, and also I think Ace will be joining if they do join a little bit later on. So Andrew, I'll ask you to introduce yourself and New Frameworks, just a little bit about who New Frameworks is, who Andrew is, and if you can also spend a little bit of time in talking about what motivated you to get to where you are, being a worker co-op business. Yeah, that I would really appreciate that. But you can take it away now, Andrew.
Absolutely. Thanks, Liza. It's great to get to chat with you. Super appreciative of the work you're doing, and excited to see more once your research is complete. See what comes of that. Um, yeah. So only been with New Frameworks for a little over 4 years now. My interest in co-ops extends much further beyond that, and was actually a big part of what attracted me to join New Frameworks. Is really looking for an organization that was a cooperative and really acknowledged that and wanted to embrace that, and lean into the differences of a co-op. um yeah, I think, even just in my interview process with New Frameworks, have being asked questions of like, what does equity mean to you? What does feminism mean to you? And getting descriptions of the company as really trying to embrace egalitarianism
Wow.
was just such a I mean, such a beautiful thing, honestly, to, with how much time and energy we put into our work life, being part of an organization that I can, really believe in, and feels like it's, um, both like culturally, ethically, really fits
Mm.
with what I believe in, and are
Yeah.
people that I want to work with. as well as then there's the whole
Okay.
side of like what we're doing in terms of the industry we're in, and trying to similar to what you were saying, really address climate justice and social justice in our work, was really exciting for me to be able to be welcomed into a group that's really pushing to make those things a forefront and the driving force behind what we're doing. Yeah, there's certainly plenty. I know you had a couple specific
Yeah.
things.
Yeah. You speak about like a transition. So I'm assuming like prior to new frameworks being a worker co-op, worker-owned business, it wasn't. And you've explained that you just have like under or above 4 years in new frameworks. So when you joined, it was already a worker co-op. I just wanted to clarify that because one of the sort of research, not research questions, but it has come to my attention that 60% of business owners who want to like exit their businesses, especially the ones that we are calling the silver tsunami. So they are the baby boomers, 65 years and above. And, mostly maybe fourth generation businesses are now looking into exiting, and 60% of that population actually do not understand or know how they are going to exit and are not prepared for that exit as well. And just having worker co-ops as a viable option, and apparently also 25%, if I'm not wrong, do not even consider worker co-op. They consider, like a private equity, or even partnership. So looking at talented people in the company and then managers or whatever, and then letting them buy off the business, but not really considering that the employees can actually take over the company and be able to run it as a worker co-op business. So I wanted for you to speak about new frameworks. What do you guys do? What's the nature of sort of management, governance? You spoke about egalitarian sort of system going on there, but just to explain to someone, because we're talking about 60%, that's a huge chunk, like to understand what is this and what, how different is it from like an S corp or any other type of incorporated business. So if you can get into a little bit about that, and then I'm sure Ace will put in the piece for us in terms of the transition.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I know a lot of companies that have transitioned in terms of what you're saying of,
Yeah.
business owners looking to move on, and kind of sells to the employees. In our case, all the owners were staying as part of the business, and really just wanted to be doing it a different way.
Okay.
So I think one of the misperceptions commonly with a worker co-op is, oh, okay, if everyone owns it, everyone is making all the decisions, and that must be like so inefficient. How do you get everything done? And so being able to differentiate like what is a governance decision and what is a management decision are very important pieces, um, because in a worker-owned co-op it is democratic governance. You still can have, if you want, a very hierarchical management structure, or really any sort of management structure. I do think that worker co-ops are usually much more successful when they are able to really find more ways to empower the workers in the day-to-day operations as well. But that can be done in many different ways. Again, there's a lot of different management structures out there to find ways to do that in functional and efficient ways. Oh, good. It looks like we have Ace jumping.
Yes. Hi, Ace.
Apologies for being so tardy.
No, it's okay. I always, I'm very gracious. Being a mom, sometimes I'm late because, you know, the kids have woken up. I'm like, okay, I need to also give grace to others. Great. Good to have you. Good to have you. So, Andrew, you can finish off and then we'll circle back to Ace, where I'll ask him to introduce himself.
Great.
Okay.
So yeah, I started to differentiate a little bit, kind of that governance aspect, the management aspect, and that worker co-op really is innately democratic governance, and then the management really you can tailor to fit your organization. Generally, the governance is going to be a board of directors that is voted in by the worker owners. So there is some control in saying like, all right, this is who I want to represent us out of the worker owners. And most often governance decisions are really focused a lot around like policy. You know, maybe it's like approving budget, annual budget, something like that. And then the day-to-day operations really still falling under management. And was mentioning that I do think a lot of worker cooperatives, when they really are finding a lot of success, have found ways to empower workers in those day-to-day operations as well.
Okay.
And so we do have some committees that are able to support, for instance, like our our build team, our design team, etc. There's different committees, and at the end of each year, they're the ones on the ground that really know, for instance, our build team, like what tools do they need to be doing their work, and that sort of thing. So to be able to contribute to a proposed annual budget for that part of the organization really gets, I think, people just kind of into the a deeper level of like understanding
Engagement.
and engagement, and that feeling of like, oh right, this really is my company, and I need to understand how it all works. And so we also have quarterly all company meetings where we come together, we discuss our financials, we kind of discuss the work different parts of the company are doing, so everyone kind of understands where one another are, and can see the big picture that they might not be seeing every day in their regular work life.
Okay, great. That's a great explanation, because I always felt like there's some confusion, like because of the whole notion of one member, one vote. It's sometimes, you know, misunderstood. So I appreciate the way you explained it very well. But I'm gonna pick up some questions from what you were talking about in terms of the committees, like empowering workers, but perhaps coming from like worker conditions, because there has been some sort of research around some cooperative enterprises having sort of unsustainable and not so great worker conditions, like well-being, right, of and how you have mitigated that. But I'll come back to that. Let's hang on to that. Ace, I'll give you the floor to just introduce yourself and spend a little bit of time talking about the motivations for transitioning from the old new frameworks, whatever it was, to where you are now.
Sure. Thank you, Liza. Let's see. So my name is Ace McArleton. Is he, him, and his pronouns. I am the co-founder of New Frameworks. I started the company with an original business partner back in 2006. And then since then, my first business partner transitioned to new work, and I partnered with others. And we always have been an LLC has always been the format of our company. And mostly because we were many kind of individual practitioners came together out of a common desire to promote natural building techniques in our region. Kind of all had different specialties, and we came together to create New Frameworks. So we always had a bit of a more of a collective of how we were, even when we were simply owners of an LLC. And so what the transition looked like between, that sort of version of New Frameworks and the more formal cooperative declared structure was actually working with the U.S. Federation of Worker Cooperatives to be one of to help them actually develop operating agreement template for worker co-op LLCs. So we felt really lucky to be a part of that kind of like research that they were doing, because worker co-op LLCs are a rising form of worker cooperative in the US, partly, but not entirely, because they provide a really great option for immigrant members. And so that ended up being one of the reasons that we helped with that work, and then ourselves have become a membership that includes immigrant members, and so the format actually works very, very well for us, and we're really glad that it also works for others. So that that transition that we affected, it became final in 2016, but we actually had worked on it for I think 2 to 3 years. Because we're busy with our work in the field, and it was hard to get that cooperative committee together and get all that legal work done and everything. So the transition formally came through in 2016, but we were moving in that direction for many years. We're really happy to be a worker co-op, to be an LLC worker co-op. There's been a lot to learn about how that works, and the differences between that and the worker co-op in a more worker co-op corporation format. I don't know if you want me to speak to that more, or if there's something else you want me to add there.
Yeah, great introduction. I'm excited already. When you said immigrants, I'm like, let me hear some more. I know. And honestly, the first time I ever saw like immigrants being like having space to engage was at the VEOC the conference, the annual conference. And that's when I started learning about, LLCs and how they are open, they're a viable legal entity for immigrants who want to be in business, and how VEOC was harnessing that, for worker co-ops, which is what you have explained. Now the pieces to me are making sense, and I now understand. I'm like, okay, this is the way for my people. I'm originally from South Africa. I was born in Zimbabwe, and then I've lived in South Africa for the past 25 years, did my education there, and I'm a permanent resident of South Africa. So immigrating is sort of and immigration issues are at my heart.
Yes.
So thank you for explaining that piece as well, because it's the first time I'm speaking to anyone that I've spoken to on the interviews speaking about that piece, which is very important.
Good.
So connecting that, and this is a question to both of you, in terms of, there's this question of because from what you have explained, Ace, it seems like you already had this collective mindset, alternative pathway. So before you came, myself and Andrew were talking about how my research is mainly concentrating on cooperative economies and other heterodox economic systems, and looking at what are the alternative to the dominant, capitalist system that we are all we are all used to, and we know the issues around that system. So I wanted to ask, it seems that culture was already there. And it was, and then you became part of this research, and you sort of transitioned to where you are now. Do you think the culture has to be there, or this, employee ownership brings that culture, and more so because you've been part of a research and and everything? What are your thoughts in terms of the employee ownership culture? Is it already innate, or it comes, how would you to answer that?
Well, I have something I want to say about it, but Andrew, I also want to hear what you want to say. So I'll share mine, and then I want to hear what you have to say. I have found that while many of us who still exist within capitalism sort of, find ourselves in conflict with the tendencies of competition and individualism that we know from within the system, we haven't had opportunity to learn and practice cooperative ways of being. So I think that while new frameworks, is attractive to those who find themselves, at odds with some of the tendencies that are within capitalism, the part about practicing and feeling comfortable in cooperative ways of being is something that we all, including myself, everybody is on a journey of learning. So I think that what I love about cooperative system, cooperative practice, is that it is a practice. It's not you are a co-op and then you're good. It's like, no, it's a constant practice of, what would it mean to look at this in a cooperative manner? What would the behavior or the choice be how we would do this in a cooperative way that would increase everybody's cooperation rather than something else? And I will not sit here and say that we achieve that all the time. I think it's something that we are constantly trying to learn and improve. So I think the culture, which you asked about, is super key and is something that needs, constant tending and constant care, and is not something that you can kind of like set and forget. Because I think we are, through the process of having a cooperative business within such a dominant system of capitalism, and in the United States, this notion of liberalist individualism that we're all dealing with, right? Where everybody's been from birth, kind of, what do you want as an individual? That's the most. So like, we also are working with that as well, in addition to capitalism, the liberalism thing. So it's like, I think, that cooperative aspect is something we need to constantly work with. Andrew, what would you say? How would you answer that?
Yeah, I love the question, and deeply agree with what you're saying there, Ace. I think when you first asked it, I had to chew on it for a second, and really I think it's both. It's I think, well, there many studies have shown that a lot of cooperatives that actually like demutualize and like transition out of being a co-op or just fail as a
Yeah.
business, it's very often they're not embracing being a cooperative, and they're looking at and it's very easy to do because you might look around and be like, what are other businesses
Mm.
around me to succeed? And usually those are not cooperatives. And I would say that they are set up better for the strategies that they are
Mhm.
that are pursuing. And so cooperative trying to pursue the same strategies is going to be a disadvantage, whereas a cooperative that is able to embrace what it means to be a cooperative and really embrace the strength of its collective ownership, and those multiple minds and energies. That's really when you see them succeeding. So I guess I, I think it's really that there has to be at least a desire from the get-go. Otherwise, I don't think people really build that culture and build like really lean into the strengths of being a cooperative, and are inevitably doomed to fail.
Mhm.
So I think there initially at least has to be that desire. But what Ace was saying, it definitely is this ongoing journey and an ongoing process and work to continue to develop that. Um, One of the things that I've seen that I think is really beautiful about it is, so the seven cooperative principles, one of them,
Mhm.
education, information,
Yes.
and so a big part of that is, hey, teaching members how to engage democratically in an organization. And I think our society really doesn't teach us that very well. I think it teaches
Mm.
us, hey, do what you're told, listen to authority, um,
Mhm.
be a good employee. Uh, uh,
Yeah.
and and we've seen a lot of our like civil engagement in our communities
Mm.
declining really steeply over many years. And I actually think that learning in a cooperative how to engage, how to discuss with other members, find differences and really embrace those, and see, like, I think, like, find the creativity that can bloom from those differences, it can actually help us then learn how to engage democratically and extend that into our communities, more broadly, and into civil society. Um,
Wow.
That was well said. Mhm.
Well said. I'm so enjoying this conversation. We just had a book club discussion here at VEOC, where we were reading this book it's called Collective Courage by Jessica Nembrad. I just thought of it when you were talking about the seven principles and the education piece of it, because in the book, Jessica is exploring cooperative thought and practice. So it brings what the two of you have been saying together, like the theory is embedded within the culture, right? Something that we in South Africa, we call Ubuntu, which I am because we are, or Umuntu Gumbuntu Gabantu, which means I am a person because of others, and or because of community, and also including non-humans and humans. So the thought, if the theory is there, then the practice has to line up. But you are alluding to education as an important piece, because people need to be educated, and the information has to be out there. And that was precisely one of the reasons, the objectives, why I decided to do the YouTube series. Because when I came to VOC, I was like, wow, this is what I've been trying to study, and it's being done, right? How do I get it out there? So there's the big piece of the education, and I'm so happy that we are talking about that and information and sharing. So going back to that question that I had at the beginning before we started chatting with when Ace came in around you spoke about the committees of workers. So beyond education, you're also implementing the governance structures that represent that democratic, egalitarian sort of way of making decisions and empowering, right, the workers as well. But I wanted to ask, are you unionized or not? Because there are some worker co-ops that are unionized, and yes, no, why? Yeah.
We're not, but mostly honestly just because it's never come up.
Okay.
It's funny, I was thinking about it recently and being like, that would be so interesting. We should think about that. Yeah, there's been a lot looked at around the sort of co-op union. And I recently saw that I think it's the US Federation.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, I just
They are
was seeing that
leading
in the
that.
documentation. Yeah, which is so cool. So yeah, I mean, I know that there's a lot out there about union worker co-ops. Our size, I think, often tends to make us not think of it just because we're like less than 20 people. But yeah, I mean, like unions are great. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think it's certainly something that if it ended up making sense at our size, it might make sense.
Okay.
Yeah,
Great. Great.
Andrew,
I was asking that because of that research I was telling you about, which has shown that some worker co-ops are, in terms of the practices for worker conditions, they haven't done so well. So in thinking about unionizing, and what is the intersection, what's the link? And I think you're saying they can, work together, and there is a link there.
Right. I mean, I think one of the things that happens in our committees, as Andrew was saying, is exactly worker conditions. That's like one of the main things is, what are people's daily experience? Are there issues that are coming up, like access to bathrooms, on a work site, for instance, or, any sort of safety or comfort, working in cold or wet conditions. I mean, we're in the construction trades. So, there's a lot that comes up around, people's safety and comfort or whatever in conditions. So that's something that we just in practice are really immediately responsive to because we're all very, very connected to the projects and to the work that we're doing. And through we have also like internal JEDI, justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion work that we do too. And so if something comes up either through that or through, that's because of somebody's social identity and a different access that they need to something that isn't working or isn't happening well enough, or if there are physical issues, around, as I said, cold, damp, physical safety, whatever, that's something that we just really put as a priority, both whatever management we have, but also through those committees, it becomes like a main topic. So because there's these multiple pathways, either through like human resources and JEDI stuff or through physical, just through the management of whatever projects we're doing, and then the committees, I feel like we kind of have these like multi-layered people can be heard and have an opportunity to give feedback and to say, this is what's happening for me and it feels bad and I want it to change, and multiple ways for that to change, that we haven't run into the issue where that's been like a entrenched problem. But I think that's exactly why mechanisms like unions are great. They provide a formal mechanism by which to, to sort of bargain for those things. And so, I think as long as there are multiple mechanisms by which a just and safe and enjoyable work condition can be had by all, that's really what you want. You just want to make sure that that's going to happen.
Great.
Yeah, I think I would agree pretty well. And like Ace had mentioned, the size of our company, I do think that's a big piece of it. I was fortunate to get to go study some of the cooperatives in Italy, where there's a really really large cooperative movement, and towards some like pretty large like manufacturing worker cooperatives. And honestly, it was a bit disillusioned in like how exclusive it was to become an owner in that, and how how like it didn't seem like a lot of the workers were able to have their voice heard. I think it really needs to have those like kind of both sides of leadership and those in power to make decisions, whether that's more at the top, or whether those that power is dispersed more, like really caring and wanting to wanting to do those things. If you don't have like a strict like bargaining system like you would with a union, as well as having that, as well as having really clear avenues for
Yeah.
workers to be able to express what their needs are, and what they're finding in work conditions. I think it's definitely an area that we could continue improving for sure too, is making those pathways more clear, and getting that out. But yeah, I think we've been fortunate, kind of, where the folks that started this company, and just like the culture that has really just been like deeply woven into it since the get-go, is a very caring culture.
Wow.
That I think that has, yeah, it hasn't like brought it to the forefront, I think, of like, oh, this is a really huge need that we need to
Okay.
figure something out.
Great. Awesome. I have two like burning questions, and I'm just conscious of time. But the first one is around do especially I think it's for Ace, the transition. Do you think that it has accelerated your equity goals, whether it's gender, BIPOC, any of the equity goals that you have? Because it does, for me, even when I was speaking to Andrew prior, it was very clear that your business as well had the social justice and climate justice. I think those were Andrew's words, piece to it. So having those values, I'm sure you must have, also thought about some equity goals that you have. Do you think being the transition has enabled you to accelerate some of those equity goals? And if yes, how? If you can explain that one. And then for Andrew, so you can think about the question, it's around the profit maximization, which is something that was drilled into me when I was doing economics. It was either shareholder maximization or profit maximization at whatever cost, and all those scary equations and all of that. But where does because you are in business to make some profit, so is there a conflict with the sort of worker co-op values and wanting to be, because you also want to be excellent, productive, technical, because your field requires you, your industry requires you to have that competitive edge? Is there conflict there just for that business owner who's considering, okay, I want to exit, I was in business to make money, right? Some people are quite honest about it, and I do want my workers to take over but still remain profitable. Is there a conflict between the cooperative thought and practice and sort of profit making and competitiveness? So I'll start with Ace, since Andrew was the last one to go.
No problem. Yeah, so the equity question being accelerated by the cooperative conversion or not. I think yes, because there's two things. The first one is just very tangible, which is that being able to have immigrant owners is a
Okay.
big part of our equity and our equity goals. And so that is one thing that I think was affected by our cooperative transition and our cooperative structure. So, you know, for instance, I mean, just to say more about that, you know, we have a language justice program within our cooperative, you know, so we have all of our materials in right now just 2 languages, but you know, we may add a third if we have others who speak you know, another language who join our company as well. And so, you know, our team is we have some folks who are bilingual, we have some folks who are monolingual English speakers, and then some folks that are monolingual Spanish speakers. So for us, Spanish is the language that is our second, you know, our additional language to English. So so having that language justice project, you know, changes our practice of how we have meetings, for instance, or how we communicate on Slack or whatever. So it's, you know, everyone has had to learn you know, how to work in both languages, and it's lovely. You know, we have our you know, drafting sets, our design sets, you know, often in Spanish primarily, and then we'll have an English, you know, version for, you know, or vice versa, depending on what language is needed in which setting. And of course, all of our, you know, policy documents and all of our governance documents are in both languages, but then also just how we operate daily, you know, so that's been very important for us. And so then second reason is, I think, just the declaration that comes with being committed to you know, a worker cooperative practice. I guess it wouldn't necessarily have to be combined with valuing all human beings, you know, around gender and race and ethnicity and you know, physical ability or all these things, but for us it does. And so I think that commitment to people and to social justice fits very beautifully. Like, it's sort of hard for me to imagine how it wouldn't also be echoed in the kind of economic justice and kind of like ability to self-actualize within your work, which is such a huge part of your life. So having those things go together really just seems like a natural fit, and I think then has given us the ability to really have a lot of continuity through all of the parts of our business, both our structure of our business, the practice of our business internally, and then the practice of our business externally, working on issues of social justice and climate justice as the focus of our work products, also having our process be reflective of that too. So it gives a coherence that I think is really important to how we all work and how we feel in alignment with our mission and our vision and our daily practices.
Wow, I made a pact with myself that I won't cry doing this YouTube series. I am so touched. Yeah, no, but I'm not gonna cry.
Crying's great. I do too all the time. Yeah.
Andrew, you go for it.
Sure, I'll jump in. So yeah, looking at is there some conflict between, you know, profit or profit maximization and being worker owned? I really don't think there is. I think the way I look at it is, you know, I also studied in business school and had it drilled into me of, you know, profit maximization, shareholder value. And that honestly is where I felt there was conflict that made no sense to me. And I think even economically, it can be very extractive from the business of, if all of the profits are going to pay out dividends for shareholders, what is being reinvested back into the business? How is the business able to succeed that way? And really, I think looking at it through a cooperative lens just makes it make so much more sense, in that capital is a tool, It is not like an ultimate end in itself. And we all want to be paid a good wage. We want to help our business develop, but not just because, hey, we want to grow the business and make it bigger. It's I think it's really very driven by the things we want to do. We really want, we're pushing for, like, we want to be decarbonizing, and working towards electrification and all these things that I think our world needs, and that is, the construction industry is a huge part of climate impacts and can be a huge part of climate solution as well. So to be able to really help with developing the research around how that goes, and then helping experiment with new methods, helping share that to other people and spread those practices, that costs money. So I think it's really just about understanding why, what is our business model, what is the reason that we want to make money, and then how are we going to do that. And of course, there's, I don't think it's a cooperative conflict. I think it's more of just an inherent conflict of, okay, if we're trying to like do affordable housing, look at housing access, land access, but we also need to make money, that's a business model challenge, more than a business structure challenge. So yeah, I mean, I think that's really where I look at it, and I think it's more just shifting the lens. I don't, if we're looking at, hey, we all want to make a good living, then like, yes, everyone's wages are coming out of our profits. And so there are folks that will argue that actually profit, or in cooperative terms, a lot of times it's referred to as surplus, is just that it's extra because you've already paid your wages at whatever level you want. You've already reinvested into all your R&D, all your expenses, and anything left over, that's just some extra. I don't think we necessarily subscribe to that. I think there's reason to have some left over that you can really have cushion for harder times, etc. Have some stored away. Also be able to, oh look, we've got this extra. We have so many ideas with all of the different people invested in our company that are excited to try different things. It's like, oh, okay, if we're profitable, then we don't have any shortage of opportunities that we can find ways to spend that money in ways that I think are really beneficial. So I think it's really just looking at, why are we trying to make money, more so than seeing a conflict in it.
Oh, great.
And I would just add to that, I know we're coming up on 11, but when we're looking at partnering with another business that was a more typically structured construction business with a one owner and then employees, what we found when we really looked at the numbers side by side is that a lot of times, and this isn't every business, some businesses, maybe there's an owner that is just making boku bucks, just a huge amount, right? Like that. But most of the construction companies, anyway, that we've seen, and we've seen a lot in our region, often the owners, when you really look at the math, it's essentially them just drawing a good, not outlandish, but like a good, just kind of average, nice, good salary for their work. And as Andrew said, that can actually, and for them, it looks like their cost of goods sold, like what they're paying their employees and whatever is, and then they're left with this big profit. But really, when you look at it, that's actually their salary that's just not being line itemed in the budget, right? So if we line item all of our salaries in the budget, regardless of our roles, and we are all the owners, right? It's like, that's what I see a lot of times, is that, wow, these profits look really great because the owners aren't itemizing their salary on their profit and loss. So it depends on the company, right? And how things are structured. But I think often when you look side by each and you look at the benefits and the full package that we get as worker owners, there's no way around the fact that we're splitting whatever that surplus is going to be. We're going to split that into, 15 people instead of one person. But again, depending on how that remuneration is structured to begin with, it may or may not actually be that much of a difference for a business owner, or it might. So, but that's kind of how we look at it. And I think everything else Andrew said is spot on.
Wow. Thank you so much. I have thoroughly enjoyed talking to you too. And it's just, it's sad that it's my last one, my last interview, but I would like to thank you for the time you took, and hopefully the people who are going to listen to this, some who are, maybe sitting at the edge trying to transition or having difficulties, trying to understand the culture of cooperation and cooperatives, will be able to learn something. But just in ending, what are some of, I'll give you an opportunity to talk about new frameworks, if you have some handles that you want, if people need your services, where they can find you, and also just to thank the community, the employee ownership community. And yeah, I'm just gonna quick, rapid closing up statements, or even the next big idea for new frameworks. Something about new frameworks and your work, just to also say thank you for the time you have given. And I know you do a lot with VEOC, so thank you so much from VEOC and from myself for the time that you have afforded me. But I'm going to end with you two saying one or two things about new frameworks and maybe cooperatives in general.
So I think the thing we can say about new frameworks is that we're excited about a new thing that we're doing, is that we're moving into the space of prefabricating and pre-designing buildings and homes, so that we can help to provide solutions, more affordable solutions for the housing crisis, not only in Vermont, but also beyond. So we're using our decades of research and work in the natural building space. So using non-toxic local materials, like straw bale, but there are other examples of those too, to create, healthy non-toxic houses that store carbon and help to reverse climate change, and also provide really needed housing for our people. So especially in the face of a lot of climate migration and movement, that many people are moving for many reasons, we need healthy, safe solutions that actually improve climate change instead of worsening it. So that's what we're very excited about. We have a line of small homes called the casitas that are straw bale, panelized, prefabricated buildings. So that's our new exciting thing. If anybody's interested, obviously happy to talk with them about it. And maybe Andrew, you could talk about BP and what we're hoping to do there.
So BP's building performance, which is where I spend most of my time. I hit on a little bit a couple of the kind of buzzwords that we're really focused on, is decarbonization and electrification. So that's, we're really looking at how can we improve the housing stock and the building stock, in ways that the operational carbon, what's being released just in the day-to-day use of the buildings is really coming down, but also looking at the materials going into that work, because there's a lot of hidden impacts in a lot of different materials. And so how can we do that in ways that are going to really be solutions? The thing that also jumped into my head is it's kind of along the lines of what Ace was saying, but I think cooperatives really are, as opposed to a capitalist organization that I think is often very individualistic, cooperative organizations really are meant to function well within a network of collaborators, other cooperatives, and other organizations. So I think if a lot of what we were saying today speaks to folks, I think we really want to continue building those ecosystems with other construction companies, design build companies, and really throughout the supply chain as well. You can find us at newframeworks.com.
Well done. Thank you, guys. I am happy about this recording, and we'll chat again soon, but thank you. Thank you so much. This will be the end of the recording. Okay.